Applied Linguistics Group uploaded this video for BS English students. Dr. Khalid Malik, the founder, has a PhD in Applied Linguistics TESOL. Having more than 25 research papers, he taught at many foreign universities and in a postdoctoral study program. Join Applied Linguistics Group at youtube.com/@1966Pakistani or use a QR code to join our Facebook group at.
Question number 8. Foreignization and domestication. Domestication and foreignization are strategies in translation, regarding the degree to which translators make a text conform to the target culture. Domestication brings the writer to the reader, but foreignization takes the reader to the writer. Domestication and foreignization are strategies in translation, regarding the degree to which translators make a text conform to the target culture, the culture corresponding to the language in which the translation is made. Domestication is the strategy of making text closely conform to the culture of the language being translated to, which may involve the loss of information from the source text. Foreignization is the strategy of retaining information from the source text, and involves deliberately breaking the conventions of the target language to preserve its meaning. These strategies have been debated for hundreds of years, but the first person to formulate them in their modern sense was Lawrence Venuti, who introduced them to the field of translation studies in 1995 with his book The Translator's Invisibility, A History of Translation. Venuti's innovation to the field was his view that the dichotomy between domestication and foreignization was an ideological one. He views foreignization as the ethical choice for translators to make. Theory. In his 1998 book The Scandals of Translation, Towards an Ethics of Difference, Venuti states that domestication and foreignization deal with the question of how much a translation assimilates a foreign text to the translating language and culture, and how much it rather signals the differences of that text. According to Lawrence Venuti, every translator should look at the translation process through the prism of culture which refracts the source language cultural norms, and it is the translator's task to convey them, preserving their meaning and their foreignness, to the target language text. Every step in the translation process, from the selection of foreign texts to the implementation of translation strategies to the editing, reviewing, and reading of translations, is mediated by the diverse cultural values that circulate in the target language. He estimates that the theory and practice of English language translation had been dominated by submission, by fluent domestication. He strictly criticized the translators who, in order to minimize the foreignness of the target text, reduced the foreign cultural norms to target language cultural values. According to Venuti, the domesticating strategy violently erases the cultural values and thus creates a text which as if had been written in the target language, and which follows the cultural norms of the target reader. He strongly advocates the foreignization strategy, considering it to be an ethno-deviant pressure on target language cultural values to register the linguistic and cultural difference of the foreign text, sending the reader abroad. Thus an adequate translation would be the one that would highlight the foreignness of the source text, and instead of allowing the dominant target culture to assimilate the differences of the source culture, it should rather signal these differences. The act of translation has been in use for millennia, however. It was not until the 20th century that it became a well-studied discipline and the idea of translation strategies became more prevalent. In the 19th century, just before major interest in translation studies began, Schleiermacher made an indication to a pair of translation strategies that were later coined as foreignization and domestication. Domestication and foreignization are strategies in translation, regarding the degree to which translators make a text conform to the target culture. Domestication brings the writer to the reader, but foreignization takes the reader to the writer. Therefore, is one strategy better than the other? Or can they be used in parallel?
Whether a text should be domesticated or foreignized largely depends on the purpose of the text. Domestication removes any challenges or violated conventions and does not remind the reader that they are reading a translation. In lieu of forcing the reader to deal with unfamiliar conventions and concepts, the text is made more fluent and familiar for the reader. By foreignizing a text, the reader is forced into a new environment that challenges the literary tradition.
Foreignization and domestication should not be viewed as a dichotomy but rather as a continuum. The benefit of domesticating is that changing an object to a more familiar object could aid the reader in understanding the text and increase how they are affected. For example, instead of characters playing xiangqi, which is a Chinese strategy game, they could play chess, which is also a strategy game but is more familiar to Western audiences. If a reader cannot identify with any of the features in a text, they could feel isolated. While domestication aids the reader in understanding the meaning of the original text, the target text's fidelity could come under scrutiny. Foreignizing can cause a lot of effect, but it has a higher chance of creating negative effect, and it is less likely to leave the reader completely unaffected. It could be used as a shock stratagem. By using foreign conventions, the reader is forced outside of their comfort zone, and it could be used to reinforce the idea that they are reading a translated text. For example, a foreign language could be introduced into a paragraph with the purpose of confusing the audience. Through the combined use of foreignization and domestication, which can be used in parallel and complement each other, a comprehensible text can be achieved. Foreignization may be the most empowering for a translator as it allows them to permeate the target text most thoroughly. However, domestication often has more effect on the reader, and the translator facilitates the process towards fluency and naturalness. In the 1950s and 1960s, translation was explored and considered both from the linguistic and political point of view. However, the whole approach changed when there was a big cultural turn in translation, initiated by Mary Snell Hornby in the 1970s. It set the focus of translation on cultural and historical approaches. According to Eugene Nidar, for truly a successful translation, biculturalism is even more important than bilingualism, since words only have meanings in terms of cultures in which they function. From this point on, translators understood that culture has the biggest impact on how we perceive the surrounding world. It has become obvious that the culture, in which we were raised, found its reflection in the language which we used on a daily basis. According to this attitude, translators divided into two translation groups, those who opted for foreignization and those who supported domestication. The best distinguished difference between these two main translation strategies was made by Lawrence Venuti, who explained that you can bring the author back home or just sending the reader abroad. Generally speaking, foreignization is based on retaining the culture-specific items of the original, like personal names, national cuisine, historical figures, streets or local institutions, whereas domestication focuses on minimizing the strangeness of the foreign text for the target readers, by introducing the common words used in the target language instead of providing readers with foreign terms. The next discussion, which arose about the translation, is the problem of invisibility of the translator in the text in domestication. During the recent years, the concepts of domestication and foreignization have developed into a convenient shorthand to describe two opposite ways, strategies of translating, see translation strategies and tactics, in many cases losing their earlier, Venusian, link to an ethics of translation and becoming, often allegedly value-free, analytical categories in descriptive studies. Domestication is often used to refer to the adaptation of the cultural context or of culture-specific terms, and foreignization to the preserving of the original cultural context, in terms of settings, names, etc. The terms have also found a place in studies meant to either reject or affirm the so-called retranslation hypothesis. Bibliography. Susan Bernofsky, 1997, Schleiermacher's Translation Theory and Varieties of Foreignization, The Translator, 3:2, 175-192.
Applied Linguistics Group uploaded this video for BS English students. Dr. Khalid Malik, the founder, has a PhD in Applied Linguistics TESOL. Having more than 25 research papers, he taught at many foreign universities and in a postdoctoral study program abroad. Join Applied Linguistics Group at youtube.com/@1966Pakistani or use a QR code to join our Facebook group at